Welcome, everyone. Thank you for logging in to this session. The topic that we're going to discuss today is the opportunities for research and collaboration with IETF. And before I give the floor to the speaker, let me give an introduction explaining how we're going to work. Please consider that the webinar will last 60 minutes. We are going to save some minutes after the presentation for a Q&A session. You may ask as many questions as you want through the Q&A panel. And then let me also tell you that this webinar will be both in English and in Spanish. So let me start by saying that you have simultaneous translation, so you can click on the globe and choose the language you want on the toolbar. And finally, let me tell you that this webinar is being recorded and that in the near future, we're going to share this recording with you. So that's everything I had to say. So now let me give the floor to Carlos Martinez, the technology manager at LACNIC, who's going to introduce our speaker. Go ahead, Carlos. Thank you, Sandra. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session. It's afternoon here. It might be morning for some. So we're going to talk about an organization that I've talked about many times, the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, and we're going to speak of the research arm, that is IRTF, that is the Internet Research Task Force. You are aware that LACNIC, for the last 4 years, has worked trying to re-establish the connection between LACNIC World and the universities and the Academy of the Internet. So it is in that framework that we're organizing this. Those of you who were present in Asunción at our event, we held activities with people of the academia. So it is in that framework that we invite researchers and scholars so that all of us may benefit of the knowledge and the problems in real life as we want to approach the internet. I don't think that IETF needs any introductions about all the protocols that we are using to see this, and even the video have been discussed in IETF. So everything, BGP, etc., whatever you can think of, any you can think of, have been debated at IETF. IETF is an open organization. It's an open international community. Any of you can participate. It promotes the standards for operating the internet. The standards are a voluntary adoption and free to use. And I think that is what makes it successful, because in the end, nobody has to ask for any permission to use it. So thanks to that, we've had a vibrant system of technology. So the product of IETF is these documents, the RFCs, the request for comments, that is the final product of a discussion. Sometimes we call them standards freely, but actually the IETF process is more complex than that. And before it gets to be a standard, it needs to go through more stages. The IRTF is the Internet Research Task Force. It's a bit different in its approach, not working so much in the operations, but with a more research driven perspective. So it has research groups that feed the IETF with ideas or concepts that can be useful for developing protocols. With us today, we have Colin Perkins, professor and researcher of Glasgow University in the UK. He's worked in the standardization of protocols in IETF and other organizations for many, many years, and he's the chair in the IRTF, and he's going to talk about some work of IRTF and what are the possibilities that we have to collaborate with both IETF and IRTF. So go ahead, Colin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Sandra, for the introduction. Just let me share my slides. Okay, hopefully you can all see the slides in the presentation. As Carlos said, my name is Colin Perkins. I'm a professor at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. And for the next few weeks, at least, I'm the chair of the Internet Research Task Force. My term is coming to an end shortly, but I'm very pleased to talk about the IETF and the work we've been doing for the last few years and the work I hope we will continue to be doing in the IETF moving forward. I apologize that I have to give this talk in English. I hope the translations are clear and everyone can hear me. So I'd like to start by saying a little bit about what is the IETF and the IRTF. So as Carlos said, the IETF is an open standards body, which is one of the leading standards bodies working on developing the internet. It's very much an open community. It's an open international community of vendors, operators, researchers, and protocol designers who are concerned with the evolution of the internet architecture and with the operation of the internet. The main goal of the IETF, the main mission of the IETF, is to make the internet work better through the development of open standards documents. These documents are published in the RFC series. They're open to everybody to read, to comment on, to implement. And the goal is to influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet, and to come up with voluntary consensus standards which drive the evolution and development of the internet and enhance interoperability and enhance the operation of the network. The Internet Research Task Force, on the other hand, is not a standards body. It's an organization which is there to promote the evolution of the internet, and it's there to try and connect the research community with the standards developers in the IETF. The focus of the IRTF is on longer term research. It doesn't develop standards, it tries to enhance and develop ideas, take perhaps less mature ideas and turn them into something which is useful for eventual standardization, and to enhance the community and make connections between the research community and industry and the standards communities. When work comes into the IETF, into the IRTF process, usually new work which is intending to produce standards comes directly into the IETF. Much of that work comes from industry, from people working in technology companies, but the IETF is open to people bringing ideas from any source, right? A significant amount of the standards work comes from academia, for example, from people in civil society organizations and from people in government. And that work flows into the IETF, is developed into the form of RFCs over a period of perhaps months or years, and eventually published as the standards documents and widely implemented and hopefully improves the internet. The goal of the IRTF is to provide an opportunity and a place for perhaps less matured ideas to be developed. It's a place where research, which is perhaps not ready for immediate large-scale deployment, can receive some review. It can receive feedback from from industry, from people in the standards community, and the ideas can be developed and improved and perhaps made more practical and more deployable. With the idea that over time, many of those ideas will become useful, ready for standardization, and make their way into the IETF for standardization. The goal of the IRTF is not necessarily to take the large ideas, it's to take the ideas which need more development, perhaps the less mature ideas, and to sort of give those ideas feedback and let them develop. The process in both the IETF and the IRTF is very much one of iterative multi-stage review. Both organizations work on consensus. They work through the basis of discussion, and They're an opportunity to present work, to develop ideas, to develop documents, perhaps into the form of standards, to develop research ideas, to develop prototypes, to discuss, to receive feedback on the work. The IETF famously works on a motto of rough consensus and running code. In order to get a document through the IETF, you need to show that it works. You need to have running code. You need to have an implementation, demonstrate that it solves a particular problem, and you need rough consensus that it's a good idea and that it meets a need. It doesn't have unresolved technical problems. It doesn't have unresolved security issues. It scales appropriately, and so on. And this is the main focus of development in the IETF. We need to develop ideas to the stage at which they both work and are demonstrated to work. There is running code, and there is rough consensus that they are a good idea, they are appropriate for deployments, they're implementable widely, and can form a basis for standardization. In the IRTF, we're perhaps a step back from that. We're developing the ideas to the point at which we can say this looks feasible to standardize. This looks like it potentially solves a real problem. It looks like it will work, and now we can take it to the IETF. So in the research community in the IRTF, we're working perhaps more speculatively, looking to develop the ideas, looking to see if they make sense, ready to lead a standards development activity. Since the IETF and the IRTF work on consensus, they can be quite slow, right? In some ways this is perhaps an issue, but in some ways I think it's one of the strengths of the IETF, is that the results when they come out of the process are widely accepted and tend to be widely viewed as being useful, implementable standards that actually improve the internet. But the process can be slow. Right. The picture we see on the slide here shows the development of one particular document, and it's perhaps a little small to read, but you see it took several years to go through the process, and maybe 15-20 revisions of the document, 15-20 rounds of feedback and discussion before the document was finally published. And I think that's one of the strengths of the IETF, right? Work that comes in both to the research community in the IRTF, work that comes into the standards community in the IETF, develops, gets feedback, is modified, changes as it works its way through the process. And in many ways, the ideas often change beyond recognition from the early version, but they are typically significantly improved by this process. Anyone coming in, naturally has their own perspective on the internet. And is used to building something based on the environment they are in. The strength of the IETF is that it is an international organization. It has people with a wide range of backgrounds who are trying to deploy products and run and operate networks in a wide range of situations, a wide range of environments, and they can give feedback from a whole range of different perspectives. And protocols get better as a result of this feedback. The research ideas that are taken into the IETF become much more practical over time as they receive these rounds of feedback from these different perspectives. The protocol ideas become much more deployable, and all of the corner cases and the edge cases and the unexpected behaviors that perhaps you don't think of when you're producing the initial version of the protocol. Someone says, "What about?" And the design improves to account for these cases, and it becomes much more robust, much more scalable, much more secure, much more deployable. And I think this is a large part of the strength of both the research community in the IRTF and the standards community in the IETF, is that it brings such a wide range of perspectives to bear and improves the design, improves the ideas that come in as they work their way through the process. So why would you want to do this? If the IETF is perhaps such a long-term process, it takes a while to evolve. Why would you want to participate? Why would you want to spend several years bringing a document through the standards process, or years or months discussing and developing your research in the IRTF to get it ready, perhaps for standardization? Well, I think there are four main reasons. The first is that you get to influence standards. If your ideas are successfully taken up by the IETF and adopted in an RFC published in the standard, then those standards are widely implemented. And it's actually very, it's a very nice outcome to have your ideas taken up, implemented, deployed, and in use potentially by millions or even billions of people around the world if the standards are successful. And perhaps that seems out of reach if you don't work in a big technology company. But I think that's perhaps overly pessimistic. There are significant numbers of people participating in the IETF, in the IRTF, who are coming from academia, coming from civil society organizations, coming from governments, or coming from smaller technology companies, coming from network operators, who have a significant impact and influence on the standards. We have, for example, around 1 in 5 of the authors of recent RFCs are from universities and from working as academics, not necessarily people from industry and so on. So I think there's a significant scope for researchers, for people from perhaps not the big tech companies you may have heard of, to have an influence on standards and be able to change change the way the network works and get their ideas deployed and used in standards. And some of those standards are very widely deployed, very widely implemented. The second reason you may want to participate is to disseminate research results. If you're a network researcher, the IRTF provides a really nice opportunity to get your results in front of industry. People certainly present results at conferences, people certainly present results in journals, and that's a useful way of presenting research results, but it tends to be academics talking to other academics. I think one of the reasons and advantages to participate in the IRTF, the research side, is that you can get your results in front of people who work for industry in the standards world. And maybe get some engagement and some interest from industry and build some collaborations there. It's also a great opportunity to get feedback on research and work in progress. Some of the most interesting, most successful presentations and attempts at engaging with the IRTF I've seen are from people who have a perhaps early stage idea, which is really fascinating. They've got some really exciting new approach to improving something, but they're not sure if it will work. And they come and they get feedback on it and learn how their idea will work in practice, and watching those ideas evolve from this early form that is a fantastic idea, but with a bunch of rough edges and issues that are perhaps unresolved, and they get feedback from the community, and the thing evolves and develops and becomes something which is useful and standardizable and eventually gets deployed, and millions of people end up using it. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And I think the last one perhaps is not so obvious. It's a great way of learning how the internet works. Going to the standards meetings, going to the IRTF research meetings, hearing the things which people are talking about, it is just a fantastic opportunity to learn the details of how the internet actually works. To get input from such a wide range of people, such a wide range of different backgrounds, and see the problems they're all having. And certainly every time I go to an IETF meeting, and I've been going for 20 odd years now, I still learn something new each time. I still learn something new about how the internet works. And I think that helps me grow very much as a researcher, and keeps my research grounded in what is practical, as well as perhaps me giving to the community. So I learn a lot, as well as hopefully contributing something to the community. So that's my introduction to the IETF. Are there perhaps any questions about this before I move on and talk in more detail about the research that's happening in the IRTF? move on. All right. So let's talk about the IETF. As I say, the IETF is the research organization that sort of works closely with the standards community in the IETF. The IETF is organized around a number of longer-term research groups, whereas working groups in the IETF often are relatively short-lived. You know, 2, 3, 4 years perhaps is a typical life for an IETF working group. The research groups in the IETF tend to be longer-lived, tend to work on perhaps larger scale, broader problem areas. The picture on the right-hand side of the slide here shows the set of current research groups. And as you can see, that there's a very wide range of topics. The IETF considers low-level technology development. For example, the Crypto Forum research group is very much focused on developing cryptographic algorithms and techniques for message integrity, security, authentication, and so on. The Quantum Internet group is very much focusing on low-level quantum internet working. We've got groups focusing on details of congestion control algorithms, for example. So we have certainly a wide range of groups looking at low-level technology development, measuring and understanding the network, building the next generation of technologies which will hopefully form the internet. We also, though, have research groups operating perhaps at a slightly higher level. We have groups such as the RASBRG, which is looking at the research and analysis of the standards processes research group, which is looking at the process by which internet standards are developed and the process of internet governance and how it relates to the IETF. We have groups like the Privacy Enhancements and Assessments group, which are focused on understanding the privacy challenges in the network. We've got groups looking at human rights. We've got groups looking at decentralization, global access, sustainability. So there are research groups covering this whole spectrum, from the low-level technology development through to the more perhaps policy issues and societal issues, and trying to connect the technologists with people with perhaps a broader perspective on how the network might evolve, and bring those perspectives in and help make sure that the development of the network isn't just purely focused on low-level technologies. As I said, the goal is to provide both a venue for researchers where they can present their ideas and learn from the engineers who build and operate the internet, but also a venue where the standards community, the implementers, the vendors, the operators can learn from research. We're very much trying to bring new research ideas into the standards space to ensure that the standards that the IETF is developing remain relevant and track the latest developments in research. But also we're taking ideas from the standards community and feeding them to the research community and hoping this then sparks new research that solves real challenges the engineers and operators are having. In addition to the research groups, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, we also run the Applied Networking Research Workshop. And this is an academic workshop we run in conjunction with ACM SIGCOMM. And the goal is to provide a venue to publish research results that are perhaps on the more applied side, more relevant to the standards community, but publish them in the ACM Digital Library in a way that academics and university researchers can get academic credit for publishing the work there, as well as influencing the standards, again, to encourage university researchers to participate in the process. As an example of the sort of work we do, we have a trio of groups in the space of security, privacy, and human rights. which I think showcase the sort of range of work the IETF does quite nicely. And these are the Crypto Forum Research Group, the Privacy Enhancements and Assessments Group, and the Human Rights Protocol Considerations Group. I think what's nice here is that we have a research group focused on low-level cryptographic mechanisms, which is developing the next generation of cryptographic algorithms that can improve the security of protocols such as TLS and the various other security protocols in the internet. Coupled with a research group which is looking at broader privacy considerations and trying to understand how to apply those cryptographic mechanisms to enhance privacy of the network and of the users of the network as a whole, coupled with a research group which is coming at this from a human rights perspective rather than a technology perspective, to understand the implications of the privacy enhancing technologies which are being developed, and to feed that again around the loop to the next generation of technologies. And I think it's nice that we have the groups all co-locating in the same place, discussing this interplay between the low-level technologies, the legal human rights issues, and the sort of broader view of what makes sense as deployable privacy-enhancing technologies. And it's touching on the broader societal issues and the policy issues, as well as the technology issues, and hopefully beginning to understand how the technologies impact human rights and privacy as a whole. And I think one of the strengths of the IETF as an organization is it tries to bring people from these different communities together. And it's one of the few venues, I think, where you get people from such a wide range of backgrounds, and perhaps not as many as we would like in some of these, the more human rights related areas, but people from quite a wide range of backgrounds coming together and discussing these issues. We also have low-level technology development, right? One of the more interesting research groups we have running right now is the Quantum Internet's research group. And the goal of this group is to figure out, how do we build distributed quantum computers? It seems that the quantum computing community is beginning to build practical machines, and they're perhaps not there yet, but hopefully in the next few years it looks like they may be something which is usable and runs at a reasonable scale and solves interesting quantum computing problems. And so this research group is looking at, how do we connect those machines together over the network? How do we build distributed quantum computers, and what are the networking requirements for internetworking those systems to build a global scale distributed quantum computer? What's the networking architecture we need in order to manage distribution of entangled quantum states? And they have some documents. There are links on the slide which describe an initial architecture there, with a surprisingly classical control plane that looks an awful lot like regular MPLS, managing optically clear paths over which entangled quantum state can be exchanged. And I think what's interesting here is that this group, has spent a few years, 2 or 3 years discussing, has some really nice documents, and it's now gone off and is actually building things. And people in this group, and there are big groups participating from Japan, for example, from Europe, from the US, who are actually implementing this, testing things out, seeing if they can actually build distributed quantum computers, and get the architecture ready for standardization ahead of anything being perhaps practical or productizable. But I think it's a really nice example of technology development. And we also have groups, as I say, looking at the higher level, the more broader societal issues away from the low-level technology details. Examples of that are perhaps the Global Access Group, which has been running for a few years now, which is looking at sharing best practices for developing and deploying internet technologies in more rural, remote, underdeveloped regions, and sharing experiences, and perhaps feeding back some of the issues with the technologies in those environments to the developers of the protocols. And coupled with that, we're just starting. It will have its first meeting in the IETF in Bangkok in a few weeks' time. We've just started a sustainability in the internet group, which is looking at environmental sustainability and how to adapt the protocols and how to manage the networks in a way that reduces the carbon footprint. And again, it's not so much protocol development as conceptual understanding of the issues, and then feeding in ideas to the standards developers in the IETF when something looks like it's ready for standardization and deployment and perhaps use and to solve some of these problems. And I think that's examples of groups at the other spectrum, the societal policy issue and the interface between those policy issues and the technologies to complement the low-level work in, for example, the quantum group or the cryptographic group or the congestion control group. And a final example of that, the decentralization of the Internet Research Group is perhaps focusing more on economics and looking at some of the economic drivers which are sort of pushing the infrastructure to be centralized and that are pushing the creation of the hypergiant providers and operators, and trying to explore how we can perhaps change the incentives to develop a more decentralized network. And that's both looking at the technologies and what can we do in terms of protocol development, but also looking at the incentives and the economics to try and understand what makes sense in a regulatory way to help perhaps reduce the centralization of the network and give incentives for a more decentralized, more widely deployable network. And I think there's some very important issues there around avoiding such a degree of centralization as we see in parts of the infrastructure. And those are examples of the research groups we have and the type of work we have in the IRTF. We also, as I mentioned earlier, run the Applied Networking Research Workshop. This is an event we organize in conjunction with ACM SIGCOM, and it runs every year. The meetings usually co-locate with the July IETF meeting, which this year is in Madrid in July 2025. The organizers this year are Anna Brunstrom from Karlstad University in Sweden and Ryan Beckett from Microsoft. And the goal here is to, as I said earlier, is to provide a venue for publishing applied networking research. Right. So if you have interesting unpublished papers focused on the more practical aspects of networking research, please do consider submitting them. Yeah. We accept 6-page papers and 2-page sort of very short contributions. The papers are peer-reviewed, and the accepted submissions will be published in the ACM Digital Library. Sort of with SIGCOM sponsorship. So if you're interested in that, please go to the website. There's an initial call for papers there now. There'll be more details coming up in the next few days on that website. And the submission deadline for this year's workshop will be the 14th of April. So please do consider submitting your papers. We are very much looking for submissions to that workshop. And I think that was all I wanted to say about the IRTF. If you wish to participate, and hopefully I have shown that this might be an interesting organization to participate in. The meetings happen several times a year. The main meetings are in person. They bounce around, so alternating between usually North America, Europe, and Asia somewhere. The next meeting is in Bangkok in a few weeks' time, and the one after that is in Madrid in July. We realize it's perhaps difficult to travel around the world. One of the reasons the meeting locations rotate is to try and spread the pain of travel. But I recognize that it is sometimes difficult to travel and expensive to travel. We do run a diversity travel grant program to try and ease some of the pain of traveling. We do offer fee waivers to people for whom the fees are a challenge. And if you attend the meeting, we provide the organizers provide childcare at the meetings if that is a useful thing. The pie charts on the slide perhaps are a little small to read. I apologize for that. They show the breakdown of the diversity travel grants from the previous meeting. And we are at just under 50% female, non-binary or trans attendees, which is the chart on the left, and the chart on the right shows the geographic breakdown. And going clockwise around the chart, we see the fraction from South America, Europe, Africa, North America, and South America. South America, yes. No, I'm reading that wrong. Anyway, it's South America, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So we have a significant number of people from outside the traditional North America, Europe, where most of the participants come from. So we are trying to improve this, but I understand that it is still difficult to travel for many people. In addition, we also have a very robust online participation option. All the plenary meetings are hybrid. We fully support remote attendance. We fully support remote presentations and even remote chairing of the meetings. And this is actually very widely used. The technology here got a lot better during the pandemic. And since then, we've put a lot of effort into making it work in a hybrid way. And people are making extensive use of that. Over the last few years, probably the numbers vary a little, but it's around 30 to 40% of attendees are remote at every meeting, and of those, about half of them are using the remote fee waiver program we have available. So please do, if you can't attend the meetings in person, consider joining remotely. And the picture on the top right there shows the spread of countries where we had remote participants at the last meeting. And in addition to joining remotely, and I recognize that time zones are sometimes a challenge for that. The IETF and the IRTFs put a lot of do a lot of their work via mailing lists. And all those mailing lists are open and free to join. So if you're interested in a particular topic, please do consider subscribing to the relevant list. And all the documents, the presentation materials, the meeting recordings are publicly available on the IETF website, on the IRTF website, and the meeting recordings are all on YouTube as well. So everything is very open. If you can't perhaps attend but want to see what is being discussed, then please do look at those materials and offer your feedback via the mailing lists if you can't attend in person. And with that, I'm done. Thank you for your time. I hope I have demonstrated that the IETF and the IRTF may be interesting organizations to engage with. I hope I've demonstrated that we are working on a wide range of topics, and we would very much like to receive your input. The wider range of people and the wider range of perspectives we can get, the better. And I would very much welcome participation from this community. And I'm sure there are fantastic ideas which I would love to see reflected in the IETF and the IRTF going forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Colin. I think it was absolutely clear. Very good. I see that there are a couple of questions, and I'm going to read them now. The first question is by Pedro Marcos, who's asking, are there any opportunities for funding to fund research from IETF?
So the IETF has a diversity travel grant program to fund attendance at the meetings, and we give a reasonable number of travel grants out to people who are from underrepresented groups and from underrepresented regions to attend the meetings in person. And we've had a number of people from the Latin American region, for example, attending meetings supported by the travel grants over the last few years. We don't fund research in itself, unfortunately, but we, as I say, we do fund the travel grants, and we have there's also a fee waiver program for remote attendance as well.
Thank you, Colin. The second question, for some reason, it says an anonymous attendee. Basically, it's the same question. What opportunities are there for grants? And I understand that you've already answered that. And there's a third question that says, I think that this question is more for Lacanic. I understand that we can participate in the deployatones, that these are the activities that we organize in Lacanic's R&D group. Well, there you have to pay attention to when there are calls. And if you want to organize one, you can write to us at Lacanic so that we can coordinate a deployatone if you wish. Well, actually, there are no deployatones in IETF, but hackathons, and that could be a question for Colin. Colin, there's a question here related to IETF hackathon. I understand that this activity is organized separately, but maybe you could tell us a bit about IETF's hackathon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, one of the big activities the IETF has at their in-person meetings is a large-scale organized hackathon. The meetings usually run Monday through Friday, and then the weekend before, the Saturday, Sunday immediately prior to the meeting, there's a hackathon organized at the meeting venue. I think it's free to attend, if I remember correctly. It's mostly an in-person event, but there is a significant amount of people participating remotely. There's usually several hundred people attend these hackathons, perhaps on 10, 15, 20 different topics, mostly looking at prototyping work in progress standards. For example, during the development of Quick, there were extensive interop events run by the protocol development community there, by the Quick working group, looking to take the different implementations of the Quick protocol, test them against each other, make sure that the standard was implementable and that the results were interoperable, and then feeding the outcome of that interop event back into the standards process and the development of the standards process. And that's the sort of usual operation of the hackathon. It's there mostly to improve the standards, take the unfinished standards, interop test them, get as many people as possible to try and build things, implement things, and see if they work, to support the running code part of rough consensus and running code. And I think it's actually a great way for smaller groups to get involved. I mean, yes, you get people from the big tech companies bringing their implementations and testing them, but we also regularly see people from universities, people from much smaller companies, bringing their implementations, testing them out, making sure that ideas work. I think also on the research side, it's also a great way of testing out prototypes. On the congestion control research group, for example, we regularly get university groups bringing ideas for improvements to TCP congestion control or quick congestion control, and demonstrating them in the hackathon, trying to get people interested in those ideas, trying to show that they work, and to gain support for these ideas from the large industry players who might be able to deploy them at scale. And you see the same thing in a bunch of other protocol areas. So it's a great way of getting feedback on ideas. And yes, it's easier to participate in person like most things, but there is remote attendance support, and I think that's reasonably successful, and a number of remote people do participate successfully in the hackathons.
I apologize. I participated in a couple of hackathons, and this was most interesting. I never tried to participate remotely, but I understand that there are mechanisms where you can participate remotely, and these work fairly well. I have a comment from Angela Rodriguez, who says, and this is just a comment, I'm from Colombia and I work in Colombia. In 2024, I was benefited from the travel IRTF scholarships or grants. This has been a wonderful experience, and I urge you to apply to these grants. I have a comment from Carlos Martin Torres Paredes. He says as follows: IRTF members, could they visit a university to promote network applied research? Do you have previous experiences in this regard?
I mean, it's difficult to sort of it's difficult to define an IRTF member, because both the IETF and IRTF are open organizations that don't really have a sort of formal concept of membership. You know, people are welcome to come to the meetings and participate on the mailing lists and in the online events, but it's not really a concept of membership. Certainly many people who do participate in the IETF and the IRTF talk at universities and engage at universities, and I've done a number of events like this one where I'm trying to engage with communities around the world. So yes, yes, very much. We try to engage with universities, but we don't really have a concept of members, which makes this perhaps a little challenging to answer.
Rather than speaking about members, it's more about people who have participated in IRTF, who could visit a university or give a talk. I would say that is possible. You have done that, not for IRTF, but we have done that for IETF. We have done that as LACNIC, and we can, in fact, do so. LACNIC can serve as a bridge between IETF and IRTF, and a given university that might wish to facilitate some kind of talk, offer a talk to its students or the faculty members. Jorge Gonzalez is asking, where can we see IRTF research so that we can collaborate? Where we can
So
find
just
this?
on that last point, I'm certainly very happy to help make connections, and I am sure the various research group chairs are also happy to help make connections with people working, people who have been involved in the IRTF and with the IETF there. In terms of where can you see the research, if you look at the IRTF website, there are links to the research group pages. Those in turn link to the IETF data tracker, where you can find recordings of all of the meetings and copies of the slides and documents that the groups are talking about. And if you also look at the website, we have the pages for the Applied Networking Research Workshop and the Applied Networking Research Prize, which we administer. And you can find the proceedings and the copies of the papers and the recordings of all the events there.
Excellent. And I have a question myself, Colin. If you would have to identify a technology or a set of technologies or problems that you consider should be analyzed but are not being analyzed, which would be the voids that you think should be and studied. If you wish to contribute new work, where would this be most beneficial? In what area?
I think there are many areas where people can contribute. I think an area where the IETF does not have work, but I would expect we would charter a new group soon, would be around artificial intelligence and AI for. We've got a little bit of work on AI for network management, but work on embedding AI into the network and distributed distributed training of AI models, for example, and integration of AI into the networking infrastructure is something where we're clearly going to be working more soon. We've also just created the sustainability in the Internet Research Group, which will be having its first meeting in a few weeks' time. And I think there's a tremendous amount of scope for new work on sustainability and techniques for reducing the carbon footprint of the internet. And I realize that AI on one hand and sustainability on the other hand are perhaps two sides which are in tension, but hopefully this gives us an opportunity to find ways of deploying some of these new ideas whilst also improving the sustainability of the network. There's also a tremendous amount of just scope for ongoing, technical development of all of the internet protocols, either in the IRTF or bringing ideas directly to the IETF in all of the standard, well-known areas of networking, DNS routing, congestion control, security, etc.
Thank you for that answer. That was most interesting to see where we can have the voids instead of just starting from scratch. Maybe there's work underway to a certain extent. Right now, we have no more questions. I'd like to thank you personally, Colin, you and the IRTF and IETF, and Greg, who I see has joined us. Thank you for trying and see us cover this gap between the Latin American region and the IETF. Thank you very much, Colin. Would you like to share with us a couple of closing words? And otherwise, we'll give the floor back to Sandra so she closes this session.
I would just like to thank you for the invitation to speak. If there are any remaining questions, if people have questions afterwards, please do get in touch with me. I shared the slides with Carlos. I'm sure they will be made available, but I'm also happy to share them with anyone who is interested. And thank you again for your time and for the invitation.
Thank you, Colin. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ewan. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Carlos. And see you in a future opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.